I'm Dr. Joan Rosenberg, and as Mark mentioned, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, and a college or a university professor, I should say, and teach graduate psychology at Pepperdine. And my focus for our conversation today is rethinking imposter syndrome.
As helping 100 people to the TEDx stage here in Santa Barbara, we get that a lot, right? People don't feel like they're ready, or why should they be the one who brings this idea to the world? And I'm sure a lot of people, when we say imposter syndrome, something comes to mind. But you're our authority today. What do you mean when you say imposter syndrome?
Well, let me start with what the people who developed it meant, and
Oh,
and
okay.
so and then let me speak into what I mean by it. The people who developed it, and it was two psychologists. It was Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. This was way back in the late 1970s, and what they did is they actually described something they called imposter phenomenon, and
Oh,
somehow over the years it became imposter syndrome. But think of imposter syndrome in general as kind of a pervasive feeling of self-doubt or
mm.
insecurity that's kind of fueled by an unrelenting fear that you're going to be found out as a fraud. And you're going to be found fraud despite countless different kinds of achievements or successes that you've already had. So that's kind of the context for it. And my thinking about this one is that it's not a syndrome at all. My thinking is that it might be just vulnerability, kind of
Mm.
kind of disguised. This sense that we could kind of an emotional, physical, mental sense that we could get hurt.
It's interesting that you say vulnerability, because I know when we're coaching speakers, and even ourselves, we're trying to get to that place where we are as vulnerable as possible. And through the coaching, we believe vulnerability is contagious. And so
Absolutely is.
if I can be vulnerable, then you're going to like me, or it's going to be better. But what you're saying is different. It makes me think differently about
Well,
vulnerability.
actually, no, we're probably actually aligned. There's a vulnerability, Mark, where I think we all experience it. And for me, on the other side of vulnerability are unpleasant feelings.
Oh,
So that the hurt we're talking about are feelings like being embarrassed, being disappointed, getting angry, being sad, those kinds of things. And the what we don't want to do is be, in quotes, kind of found out in that way, in such a way that we then experience the embarrassment or that we experience the disappointment, those kind of that kind of a reaction. And there's another side to vulnerability where I absolutely believe that when we can choose into being vulnerable, that we want to go take risks, we want to learn something, whatever it might be, that when we can choose into that, we're actually at our greatest strength. But but when we don't handle unpleasant feelings well,
mm,
vulnerability feels like a weakness. When we handle
mm.
unpleasant feelings in a very effective way or an adaptive way, then vulnerability feels like a real strength.
This reminds me of the concept you have coined around emotional mastery.
Mhm.
So, as you said, as I learn how to deal with this feeling, it's like, oh, if I become a master at this feeling. For those who haven't seen the not one of the 1.9 million people who have seen it, just give us the headlines on emotional mastery, because that was a brilliant talk.
Thank you so much. For me, it's centered around one's capacity to experience and move through 8 unpleasant feelings.
Right.
And my bias, my belief is that if you can experience and move through or handle one or more, and it's all of them, of 8 unpleasant feelings, you can go pursue anything you want in life. And the 8 feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration. So if we can handle those 8 feelings, we really can go pursue anything we want.
I remember specifically, it had a big impact on me, but there was one takeaway I had, which was you called them these waves. I remember the very first time I talked to you about it, and you said that wave of that feeling is only around 90 seconds long, if I remember right.
Right.
And if we can push through that,
Mhm.
then that's kind of the first thing. And all that stuck in my head was, is this the first 90 seconds? Is this the first 15 seconds? Is this,
Right.
and then when I'm talking to someone who's experiencing some distress, I'll say, hold it. Dr. Jones says it's only going to be 90 seconds.
Well,
I'm here
right.
with you.
Right. For me, it's one or more waves of one or more of 8 unpleasant feelings. I never say it's just one. It's one or more. But the idea here is that they're short-lived.
Right, 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 right.
And the other part of it, so people understand the whole context, is that most of us come to know what we feel through bodily sensation. So think the heat in your face of embarrassment. We come to know that we're embarrassed because we feel that heat. So we all have different markers for different feelings. But the key then is, if you can ride one or more of those short-lived bodily sensation waves, then you can actually stay present to the feeling that you're experiencing.
So then bringing it back to the imposter syndrome or
Right.
vulnerability or
Sure.
that, um, when I talk to people who have that, I don't feel like they're doing this fake it till you make it, or they're trying to be fraudulent at all, at
No,
all.
no, no. They're concerned about being found out that they're fraudulent. And so let me walk you through a little bit of the way I think about this.
Yeah.
If I take one person or a person that has low experience, they have a low skill set, or it's not a strong skill set. They don't have much experience. They don't have much by way of expertise. The knowledge base is low, and there's no mastery. Then somebody coming into a situation and being given a task or being asked to do something is likely to feel like an imposter. It's like, I'm not
Mm,
good at this, right? And in my mind, that makes sense, because all of those skill sets or all of that knowledge base is it's not adequate enough to the task. But if we, or somebody at the beginning of learning a skill, right? They may have some of the basic knowledge, but they haven't embodied the experience where they've consistently applied practice to the knowledge. And when we do that, we gain experience. And when we gain experience, then we gain the skills, we gain the mastery, etc. When somebody comes in, and this is where the imposter phenomenon or the imposter syndrome was kind of first named. When somebody comes in with a great skill set, they have expansive body of knowledge. They've got great experience. They have the mastery and the expertise, and they go, I feel like an imposter.
mm,
In my mind, that doesn't make any sense at all.
I'm with you.
And that's where I think a whole host of other things are taking place that then lead to the imposter syndrome, which in my mind is probably just vulnerability, but there's a lot of contributors that make that vulnerability heightened. And that's where I really want to kind of challenge this idea.
Let me see if I can connect a dot from my own head, because it feels like the person who doesn't know it yet, or let's say they're a white belt in this skill, and
Sure. Yes.
they're in now put into a position where they have to perform and act as if, or it's expected that they know more than they actually do.
Right.
That was the first case. I would, in my language, I would say that's a conscious incompetence. They're
Correct.
aware of their incompetence.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And then the second case, which is from the external, they're competent, like, oh my gosh, they everything, all the markers line up, but they don't feel it. Is
Right.
that unconscious competence?
Well, my belief is they probably do have unconscious competence. They actually
Yeah.
have everything, but they're doing a whole host of other things that diminish their experience of that. And
Got it.
that's
So
where
tell us, there you go. Tell me about that. What are they doing? Because I think there's some transition from the conscious, unconscious incompetence or
right,
competence, right?
right.
God, that's hard. Those words. Why did they pick those words? To conscious competence, or like I got, or unconscious, or I got this. I got it. So what are those self-sabotaging things that they do?
I think probably I haven't counted them up. I'm going to guess 8 or 10 of them, but
Wow,
let me kind of walk through the
that'd be
different
great.
ones that I have. So one of them is that you actually you don't deal with unpleasant feelings very well.
Okay.
So, and I would say especially disappointment, embarrassment, and vulnerability.
Hmm.
So that for me is the first. You don't handle those feelings well. The second is that you find it difficult to be vulnerable. So again, this sense that you could get hurt. So you don't want to put yourself out there. Why? Because you might have to, if you do, then you might experience one or more of those 8 unpleasant feelings.
Right.
Right. So the second one doesn't happen because the first one's not happening. Then the third mark is somebody engages in harsh self-criticism.
Mm.
And harsh self-criticism to me is actually a distraction from unpleasant feelings. I think of harsh self-criticism as a thought hijack
Ooh.
of unpleasant feelings. So we've got, again, this unpleasant feeling things at the foundation of it. Another is that someone doesn't acknowledge or they downplay their own successes and accomplishments. There's more.
Keep going. Okay, give me a couple more.
All right. So they don't acknowledge the successes and accomplishments. Another is that you devalue, you diminish, or you dismiss the compliments of others. And so if you're engaged, think about this. If you're engaged in harsh self-criticism and you're simultaneously refusing compliments.
Wow. That's stacking. Yeah.
There's no room for the good to come in.
Right.
So how then can I acknowledge my own real, genuine experience if I'm not allowing the good to come in or to be there?
Wow. How do you break? I mean, that is a dynamic duo of distrust or something there, right? How do you break that?
Well, again, for me, it's one of the first things I've started to do from a practice perspective is ask people to start to break this harsh self-criticism. My thoughts around that is it's unbelievably damaging, and the harsh self-criticism has no equivalence to unpleasant feelings. Unpleasant feelings are fine, they pass, there's no damage. You get engaged in harsh self-criticism and there's a lot of damage that you end up doing to yourself, and it's exponential in my mind.
You're the expert on this, not me, but I've got to think that if you have a little voice in your head telling you you're not good enough or you're being critical, that voice now is internal, but at some point early in childhood was an external voice coming at you. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, that it could have emanated from there. But again, my thinking on that, you might like this too, Mark, is that we can use our past as an explanation, but my thing is we never use it as an excuse.
Oh, wow. Well, there's a
So,
t-shirt for us, everybody.
yeah, so maybe that's where it started, but then we have to understand who it was that said it, what was going on for them. Are they really the authority on you now in terms of your life experience currently? And so it's bringing the person up to date in terms of their own experience.
So if someone who's listening to this is resonating and saying, "Oh man, you got me pegged," sometimes making that change in the way we think in life it's a snap. Boom.
Yep.
I make a change. And then it's just kind of reminding and getting good at that. Is this the kind of symptom, if you will, or behavior that you can change quickly? Or do you have a tip for someone who's feeling this way of what they might say to themselves to get over this hump?
You talking about the harsh self-criticism itself or
Yes.
in general? Yeah. So for me, with the harsh self-criticism specifically, One is heightening your awareness of how much you engage in it. The second is the moment you're aware that that's what you're doing, you kind of take a breath, take a step back and go, all right, what was it that
Mm,
I was experiencing right before I started to be harsh to myself, so that I can become aware of what the feeling is that's hard for me to know or bear.
this gets back to that sense we've talked a lot about on the show, as being present.
Right,
And that self-awareness is probably that state that we're all trying to get to. So that
right,
so to your point, oh, I'm doing that again, I need to stop.
right, right. Now there's others. I can go to the other ones too, if you want me to add in here.
I think what I want to do is I want to make a link. Have you written about this, Joan, yet?
I have not yet written about this.
Oh, this is the
This is a
beginning, you
first
guys.
exposure.
This
So
is the beginning. Joan, I so appreciate how you help us understand this. And I'm going to make this talk required listening for anybody in my future who professes to have imposter syndrome.
okay, that sounds good, Mark. Thanks so much. And again, I take a look at it from the standpoint of vulnerability.